Hello everyone, sorry about the super long delay. There was some technical difficulties switching from generator power to electric power. So now we have power to the house. The AC is trying to cool the house. Last I checked, it's at 82 degrees in here. So that's going to be bad. It must have been 89 or 91 in here. It was bad. I want to remind you that Benepet is one of our sponsors. They were actually the first one to sponsor Markna. They were super excited to support this event, and I thank them so much. And all the prizes they sent, that's all in the raffle. And by the way, y'all, the raffle is up. It has raised $6,500 for Coral Restoration Foundation in Florida. That is awesome. It's literally double what I was hoping for. So, wow. You guys are great. And we are about to do speaker number 14. So we'll switch this over here. I just want to thank you guys for tuning in live stream after live stream. We are a full hour behind, but there's one speaker that I've not been able to reach. So this may work itself out in a couple of hours. In the meantime, we're going to go ahead and meet Brian D. Greene. Now, I don't have a huge intro, but I can tell you this. I have been hounding Brian for probably 3 years that I want you on my channel because he does deep dives, and I see the videos he shares, and his videos are always spectacular. They are National Geographic. You know, I always think of that as pinnacle. That is the fantastic footage. He does this slow motion thing. The water, it's like he took ozone down there and cleared the water first, or I don't know. I don't know how you do it, but seriously, I said, please come on here. He says, yes. And then for the last 45 minutes, he sat in the green room waiting for Paula to finish. And then we had to turn off the power and restart everything and then move his presentation in. So, Brian, thank you so much for tuning in. What time is it in Oahu right now?
6 in the evening.
Okay, so this isn't a bad hour for you.
Oh, it's nice. Yeah,
Thank you for being patient, waiting for for us to do this.
of course.
Really,
I'm
can
glad
you
to be
tell us
here.
about? Okay, all I care about is massive, incredible stories about these
Right.
deep. I want to hear what it's like to do what you do, and you can be as crazy, technically detailed as you want, because I've never done it. The most I've been
Right.
is like 115 feet, and you go hundreds of feet. You decompress for zillions of hours. I don't even know where you get your extra air from. I don't know what you carry on you. I don't know what you do in an emergency. I don't know if you've ever had an emergency or if you've ever decompressed yourself. I don't know anything. I want to hear some great stuff out of you.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I've been doing deep diving and deep coral reef exploration for decades now. So I don't know if you know this, but I have a kind of a unique upbringing. I grew up in at Kwajalein Atoll in the Republic of the Marshall Islands,
Okay.
so in the Central Pacific, halfway between Hawaii and Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And the island I grew up on is very tiny. It's only 3.5 miles long by half a mile wide, and
That is tiny.
there's not a whole lot to do that isn't ocean related.
Yeah.
So I at a very early age, in the '80s, became a fish nerd, kind of. Yeah. So, ever since then, growing up there, on the Kwajalein is the largest atoll in the world with a 1,100 square mile lagoon.
Can you
Um,
spell that? I think I know the word you're saying. I
it's Kwajalein, Kwajalein.
Okay. I think I've
Yeah.
seen that, but my brain has no idea where this is.
Yes.
You
Yeah,
got a
like I
map
said,
behind you. Just point to the
yeah,
planet.
it's actually like right here. It's
Okay,
off. It's
great.
off the screen, but
Great.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So
But
you're
yeah,
on this tiny island.
right. And so my dad was a diver in the early '80s, and he started keeping aquariums when I was like a little kid. So like I was always exposed to aquariums, and um, I remember he had like probably 1980 or 81 or 82. He had a large clown triggerfish that he had collected, and somebody from the Waikiki Aquarium came down, and they had never held one at the time up to that point, and they ended up taking it back to Hawaii with them, putting it on display. But yeah, because I was exposed to all this from such an early age, I started learning Latin names of fishes in fish books when I was like 3 or 4 years old, and I just kind of became this uber fish nerd and made it my mission to find all the fishes that were around me at Kwajalein. And then in 1989, I was 9 years old, and a guy named Robert Myers published this book right here, Micronesian Reef Fishes,
Hmm.
and it became sort of my Bible. like up until even today, I still carry that book around with me.
Wow.
And I made it a mission to find every fish in that book. Um, and then through that process, I started finding fishes that weren't in the book,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what really kind of piqued my interest. And right around that same time, I heard the story of this famous fish biologist, ichthyologist named Jack Randall,
Mm-hmm.
and he had named a species of fish after a guy at Kwajalein, a guy I knew. He named a little wrasse called Cerulabris johnsoni. And to me as a kid, that was like mind blowing. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that there were fish that hadn't been found by scientists already.
Yeah.
So that really became my mission after that, after hearing that. And I got lucky enough to, stumble upon some fish that were actually new to science when I was in high school. And somebody put me in touch with Jack Randall.
Uh-huh.
And I got to meet with him when I was about 16 years old in the office right next to me.
Oh, wow.
Here at Bishop.
Nice. Wow.
So I've kind of had a relationship with the Bishop Museum for
Mm-hmm.
over 25 years. And through that relationship with Jack, he was the most prolific, successful ichthyologist in all of history. Like not just coral reef fishes, but like all ichthyology.
Wow.
And our fish collection right behind me, actually, on the other side of this wall, is the fish collection of Bishop Museum with 140,000 fish in jars.
Yeah, they're
And
all not living.
none of them are living.
What do you
Yeah,
save those in? What are they in? Oh,
so they're in isopropanol.
Okay, rubbing alcohol.
Yeah, and we have actually.
Can you turn it? Can we see the fish?
Yeah, sure.
It's sleeping.
Yeah, it's the long sleep. But so the entire back wall behind me,
Yes.
on the other side, is all the jars on that wall have this little red ribbon on them, and
Okay.
and that designates the types, so the holotypes and paratypes. So everything on this wall behind me was a new species that was described by Jack Randall or somebody else here at Bishop Museum, and there's hundreds of them.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's through my mentoring with Jack and diving with him and working on fishes. That's how I kind of independently realized that there was this other guy working at Bishop Museum, and we were on these similar paths of deep reef exploration, using exotic gases and rebreathers. And that guy's name is Dr. Richard Pyle.
Yes.
So yeah, this office I'm in right now, this is the office that Richard and I share. He's not here right now, but
all these names you're dropping are names I've been, secretly fangirling over for a while. I got to meet Richard Pyle at the Machina Boston years ago.
Yeah, cool.
And of course, I ran into you at a previous Machina or two or three. And
Yep.
you acted like you knew me, and I'm like, dude, you're the one. And you're like, Mark, it's you. I think we even ran into an aqua shelter together, maybe. I don't know. We've run into each other.
Yeah, I don't make it to the mainland very often. I'm a Pacific Island guy, but yeah, we have met up at a couple.
I've actually been to Oahu once.
Oh, cool.
My mother invited me to join her and her husband at the time for Thanksgiving on Oahu, and I was like, yes. And I did all the tourist stuff. So
cool.
I did scuba, of course. I did.
Right.
I almost got run over by a boat. We have time. We've moved the whole show. We have time. This story, no, I don't think anyone's heard this story. I brought my fins. I had my mask. I had my snorkel. I was like, I'm just going to go out. And I even asked him how, and I was at Waikiki and at that hotel with the rainbow. And I just said, hey, can I just go out that direction? Like, you can go as far as you want. And I was like, done. I mean, you tell me there's no limit. I am going to go and go. And so I just swam out there and I got really far out past these pillar-looking pylon things sticking up. Didn't know what those were for. And I got around these rocks, and I was kind of in between them, and I was looking. I could find, like, huge puffers, and there was, these weird pencil urchins and all this stuff, right? And I was just enjoying myself. But the swells occasionally would, like, kind of cast me toward the rocks, and I was like, I have to really keep myself centered. I have to pay attention. And I'm right under the surface, and I'm a snorkeler. And I've got the nozzle up with the yellow on the top. My fins are yellow. And I hear tick, 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 tick. And I'm like, ticking? What would tick? That's such a weird sound. I mean, So
Right.
I stuck my head up as a boat is like right
No,
next on
that's scary.
top of me. And the guy hangs out the window, the captain, he's like, "Whoa, dude!" And I'm just like, "How?" I didn't even know which direction you were coming from because the ticking was everywhere,
Right, right.
and I was in their lane. That boat would take people out to the submarine to do that submarine dive. So I
Oh,
almost
wow.
got killed there, but I didn't die. Came back in. The next day, I did the submarine. The next day after that, I did the helicopter over Hawaii,
Cool.
and got to see where they did Jurassic Park and the other movies. And I did the luau and all that. I mean, I had a fantastic time on that beautiful island, and I
Yeah,
can't believe you're there every day. I mean, you're
I'm here every day. Yeah.
that's
If I'm
awesome.
not on an expedition somewhere else on some other island
Yeah,
in the
of course.
Pacific, I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah.
Talk about deep dives. When did you decide to start going deep? What was considered deep? What is deep to you these days?
Okay, so I started, back in the early mid '90s when I was living on Kwajalein, and it was just back then it was deep air, like technical diving
Yes.
that you hear of now didn't really exist. That was kind of the beginning era of that.
Mm-hmm.
In the early '90s, there weren't really commercially available rebreathers.
Mm-hmm.
There weren't a whole lot of people other than like a few cave divers and deep wreck divers experimenting with mixed gas diving with
Yes.
helium.
Yeah.
So I started this was also like the early days of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
I'm on this isolated little island in the
Yes.
middle of the Pacific. We had
Yeah.
decent internet for the time, so I just started reading things about mixed gas diving and my mom had my mother actually ran a balloon business, so
Okay.
we had helium around.
Ha!
So I started experimenting with putting helium in my scuba tanks when I was in high school,
Wow.
or early, before I really even knew what I was doing. But
Right.
I started noticing, obviously, that like when you go deeper, the fish change a little bit. Things are a little bit different, and I started noticing a lot more species of fish that weren't in the books that were
Yeah.
available to me. And that's when I really got clued into this.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea that Richard Pyle or anybody else was doing this kind of stuff
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah.
I just knew it was cool, and I was finding things I'd never seen before.
Yeah.
And then later on, towards the late '90s, is when I got introduced to rebreathers.
Mm-hmm.
And my very first rebreather turned out to be kind of a toy. It was not the real practical mixed gas closed circuit rebreather that we need or use today.
Yeah.
But early 2000s, I was able to afford the high end closed circuit rebreather,
Yeah.
even as a poor college student,
Yeah.
by selling some very high end aquarium fish.
Yeah. Yeah. So I learned about rebreathers from the fantastic IMAX movie Coral Reef Adventure.
Right.
I've watched that so many times. I went to IMAX and watched it over and over. I got the book that tells you
Yeah.
everything about how they filmed it. I don't know if you helped film it, but anyway, it was a fantastic experience and learning about the rebreathing and learning about the cameras they used under the water.
Right.
There was this one camera that they shot for IMAX, and they said when you started it, I did the action. They said it sounded like a lawnmower came on. So they would come up on this beautiful fish, and they start the lawnmower, and the fish is of course freaked out and swims away, and it takes 24 seconds until it gets the first frame. So you've done the lawnmower 24 seconds. There's no fish anymore, and they've shot all this footage of nothing. But it was so interesting about the mixing of the gases to be able to
Right.
be down longer and not to get the nitrogen in your bloodstream.
Yeah, so we made custom gas mixes with helium, and the helium does, it does two things. It cuts the nitrogen, but it also reduces the narcosis. So we
Yes.
even at 100 meters, 300 feet plus, we still have a clear head.
Yeah.
And which is, if you're chasing fish and want to remember what you were chasing, that helps.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you the horrible hobbyist question. How's the deepest you've ever gone? Well, what is the depth? What is your record?
Exactly 500 feet.
Wow.
No
And
deeper.
was it scary? Was it just, yeah, I hit 500, I did it?
It wasn't scary, but I mean, there's always in the back of your mind, the further basically the deeper you go, the longer your decompression is.
Yes.
And when you have a decompression ceiling, the surface is not your friend
Yeah.
ever
Right.
until you're done decompressing. So
Yes.
there's always a thought in the back of your mind, like, you know,
Was this a bad
it's
idea?
not necessarily scary at the moment that
Yeah.
you're deepest, but
Yeah.
you have to think ahead, like, oh, I've got 5 or 6 hours before I can get back in the boat.
Yeah.
I need to make sure everything's working perfectly.
Yeah. Okay, can you tell us about that? You're going down. You're wearing a rebreather. You don't need any other tanks. You don't have to strap
Uh,
extra bonus tanks.
So we do.
You do.
We have a backup set of tanks with various gas mixtures in case the rebreather fails. And
Okay.
what we tend to do on any expedition is like the first day or two is to get all those tanks set up and mixed.
Okay.
And depending on the logistics of the dive or where we're diving or the boat, it varies on how we do it. But certain islands that have a vertical drop off or very
Yes.
steep drop offs, we can stage tanks along that drop off along a line or in
Okay.
specific spots. Other places like here in Hawaii, to get to those depths, you have to be way offshore, miles offshore.
Yeah.
And in a situation like that, you can't just string tanks, so you got
Yeah.
to carry them with you.
Okay.
Uh,
And then do
so
you have extra tanks at the decompression levels waiting to connect to your system somehow as you're coming
So
up?
not necessarily connect to the system, but if the rebreather electronics were to fail
Mm-hmm.
or if it were to get flooded with water and be unusable, then you need a trail of breadcrumbs of gas to get
Yeah.
back to the surface.
And does
And
each one have a regulator connected? Because you can't
yeah,
connect them underwater, right?
no, there we do. Some of our tanks do have like a waterproof connector,
Oh, okay.
but and some rebreathers, like the older version of the rebreather I dive now, we used to plug in and unplug tanks all the time, but
Oh, wow.
they're just basically it's a normal scuba setup like
Mm-hmm.
you would dive, but there's no BC attached. There's like
Right.
special strapping and clips.
Yeah.
But then we have it's varying levels of nitrox to allow you to get back to the surface. And luckily, we've never actually had to do a full open circuit bailout in the 25 years I've been doing this. We've never had a full open circuit bailout situation.
What does that
Occasionally, we'll
mean?
switch over to those tanks, or we have an open circuit regulator in the rebreather mouthpiece too,
Okay.
and we'll switch over to that if we are like dealing with an issue until we get it fixed. But we've
Oh,
never had a
open circuit means suck in the air, blow it out, not
yeah,
rebreathe. That's what you're saying.
right,
Okay, I understand what you're
exactly.
saying now.
So
Okay.
the normal scuba you're used to is considered open
Open
circuit.
circuit. Okay, I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
And then
Yeah.
the recycling of the breath, we call it closed circuit.
I love the rebreather because you don't make all the bubbles.
Right.
You
It's
know, so
awesome.
you're not
Right.
disturbing the guys. And when you go down and you're going down, 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 I know there's currents, but is there like crazy currents or is it pretty docile because all the activity's up high?
It depends like where you are. We tend to choose our dive sites
Yeah.
um, with the hope of not having crazy currents.
Mm-hmm.
But just because there's so many other complicated things going on, we don't want to have to deal with that. But we've run into that situation, especially like in the Philippines, where they have crazy tidal currents and upwellings and downwellings, and
Oh,
you never really know which direction the water is going to be going. And
okay.
we've run into a situation too where a lot of the time when we have surface support, so we have guys up in the boat,
Yes.
to help us if we have an issue. And when we're on our way up from a dive, we like to blow a lift bag to the surface on a line so they know we're on our way up. And we've run into a situation where between us at the bottom and the surface, there's currents going in opposite directions like
Okay.
this.
So your bag's doing this.
Yeah, crazy. Or it
How do you
starts pulling
communicate
you.
up above? How is that communication working? Is it a hard wire? Or
No, so that's those lift bags is part of our communication. So it depends on who we're diving with or where we're diving, but we'll tend to send up a yellow bag if everything's okay.
Oh,
If
like
we're having
like a
problem.
flag. Got it.
Yeah, basically. Well,
Okay.
if somebody's having an issue or a problem, we'll send up a red float.
Okay.
And in that situation, like the boat would clip a one of those bailout tanks to our line, and it will drop down to us.
To get you
So
another backup. Yeah. Wow.
I mean, we're
Okay.
flexible. It depends on the situation and where we're diving, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of options. But all of it requires a lot of training.
Yeah.
It's not easy
I
stuff.
kind of wanted to get trained just so I can do this with you. Not
Yeah.
500, but
Well, I mean, you
man,
don't
I
even.
think this would be so fun. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
I mean, even at recreational depths, rebreathers have huge benefits, like you were
Yeah.
saying. Being silent and
Yeah.
not having bubbles.
Yeah, and having dwell time.
Unless you have a
Stupid.
lawnmower camera,
Right, right, right. Yeah, I want to have it. I have an iPhone, but the case will
right?
probably go. The case will probably go, and that'll be it. So how does that work with all your gear? I mean, your watches, your gauges. I guess they're just built super
Yeah,
tough against the pressure.
we don't even take stuff with us unless we know it's been,
Well, I meant dive watch, but yeah, yeah.
yeah,
You have to make stuff
tested.
that's like the insane stuff.
Yeah, I don't even. I've flooded so many watches. I don't even wear a watch anymore.
You gave up. I don't care what
Yeah,
time it is.
even the 300-meter Citizen watch I had, but my last watch it flooded at like 400 feet, and I just gave up.
You're like, you know what? I was at Costco, I think it was. They had scuba watches. Like, yes! And I'm looking at each package, like, which one do I want? And they all said water resistant. I'm like, well, this is BS. I'm a diver. I need waterproof. And so I called the company and I kind of raised hell, said, where are the waterproof watches? And they said, we say all of our watches are water resistant. I'm like a cover your butt situation? Because, I mean, it's for scuba diving. It's going underwater. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
water
that
resistant.
sounds
Like,
like a legal liability thing or
it
something.
does. I guess they were
Yeah,
sick of reimbursing people for
yeah.
watches.
But the rebreather components they're all tested, factory tested to at least 600 feet.
Yeah.
The camera systems that we don't take anything that isn't rated to at least 100 meters,
Yeah.
at least 330 feet. Um, we take them a little bit deeper, but
Yeah.
so far we haven't had too many catastrophic implosions of stuff.
Right. No, that's good. How often?
Yeah.
I mean, how over the years you've been doing this? Have you been keeping track of all the fish you've caught? Do you say I've caught 10,000 fish or I've caught 51 fish or
Never,
whatever it is?
never thought about it, never really thought about it that way.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I kind of when I was in college, I was doing a commercial aquarium fish collecting a little bit,
Okay, so you're doing a
um,
lot.
but now it's so targeted. Like
Yeah.
even on a 2-week expedition, I might come back with a dozen specimens. Like
Uh huh.
it's very very limited.
Yeah.
So unless we're doing some kind like there's been some projects where we're doing genetic studies, um, and we'll catch a lot of fish if we're doing like population genetics.
Yeah.
But if it's a normal find new species kind of expedition, we don't bring back that many.
Okay. And have you had anything named after you?
I actually do. Yeah.
Yay! What did you find?
So I have there's a triggerfish from Christmas Island in Kiribati. They call it, I think in the aquarium trade even it's called the Curie trigger, but
Okay.
it's Xanthictes greeneye, and it's a Xanthictes triggerfish,
Yeah.
planktivore,
Uh-huh.
and there's kind of a funny story with that one. The reason, so Richard Pyle and our buddy John Earl,
Mhm.
longtime dive buddy, they named it after me because
We just lost him. Okay, guys, don't worry. We'll get him back. We're gonna have to wait for his connection to come back. Right when the story was getting good. You're killing me, Smalls. That's fine. We'll make this work. Here he comes. All right, we got you. What do I got to do here? So, there you are. You're starting to tell us a great story, and then boop, you were gone.
yeah, what happened? I don't know what happened.
I don't know. We just lost you. Spur of the moment. There you go. Okay, so you said it's kind of a funny story, and then we lost you.
Oh, okay. So yeah, back in 2005, Richard Richard Pyle and John Earl and I did an expedition to Christmas Island in Kiribati,
Mm-hmm.
and it's always the logistics of pulling off an expedition on remote Pacific islands is always super tricky.
Yeah.
So we have to ship stuff way ahead of time,
Mm-hmm.
and you never really know where it's going to end up on an island.
Yeah.
So we shipped all of our gases down to Christmas Island almost 6 months ahead of time, but we couldn't. Once we flew down there, we couldn't find all of our gear. We had our rebreathers that we brought with us. We found the gas, but I couldn't find my collecting nets.
Mm-hmm.
But we were like, oh, we're here already. Let's just do a test dive,
Uh-huh.
make sure everything's working. And it was our very first test dive of that expedition, and we ended up going down to about 300 feet just to make sure all the equipment was working.
Yeah.
And John had his camera, so it wasn't like pointless that we were still going to get some data and see what fish were down there.
Yeah.
And immediately on that dive, I noticed this triggerfish. I was like, this is different. This is not any xanthichthys I know.
Right.
But I didn't have any nets, so I chased one down into the reef, into a little hole about that big, and I just reached in and I undid its trigger with my 2 fingers and I pulled it out. So I'm at
caught it with
300.
your bare hand.
I'm at 300 feet with this triggerfish, and no, I don't even have a bucket. So I just put it in the pocket of my board shorts, and it was kind of flopping around in there.
I'm sure
for
it was.
And it actually, for like the next 3 hours of the dive, it was biting my leg.
Let me out.
Yeah. So, and then we got up in the boat.
So, of course, they had to name it after it's chewing on you in your pocket for 3 hours. You own that fish.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, it stayed with me in my pocket for the rest of the decompression in like 3 or 4 hours. And when we got up on the boat, I showed it to Rich and John, and they both agreed that it was a new species of triggerfish, which is pretty crazy because even though xanthichthys are planktivore, they will take a hook, a tiny hook. So it's pretty remarkable that one of them went unnoticed until 2005.
Wow. Well, no one was down that deep without their nets, you know.
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
They needed someone that could reach into a cave and pull it out with their bare hand. Yeah. That's awesome. That was a great story. Okay, do you want to start showing some of your stuff? Because I love asking you 1,000 questions.
Let's start with that first slide, and I'll tell you what we're doing here at Bishop Museum.
Okay.
So this has been a long thing in the making. What we call Excore, which is the Center for the Exploration of Coral Reef Ecosystems, which is now an official department here at the Bishop Museum in Honolulu. And it basically combines the legacy of our advisor, Jack Randall, who was a pioneer in his day in the first use of this new technology called scuba diving to explore coral reefs. So I mentioned he was like the most successful ichthyologist in history. That's because he was in the right place at the right time. He's also very talented, but he was the first diving fish biologist. So you can imagine, 50, 60 years ago, before there had been any real coral reef exploration, he was the first one seeing most fish on the reef. Wow. And then what we are doing and hope to do with Excore is we take the latest technological advances and apply them to exploration of coral reefs in new and novel ways. Basically, that's not just the closed circuit rebreathers, but that's utilizing underwater robotics, autonomous underwater vehicles, ROVs, submersibles, all the tools that are available for exploration in a kind of synergistic, efficient way. Okay. And I think the next video, can we go to the next one? It's rebreather diving deep, collecting new species of fish. So I wanted to throw that in there to give some context into what we're going to do with Excore, and it's kind of related to the triggerfish story I just told, because something similar happens in it. So you can play that.
All right. When we do that, I think we're going to go mute, and we got to make sure we go back to audio again.
Okay.
We're not muted, by the way.
Okay. Yeah, I don't hear an echo.
With his hand.
Yeah, sorry about the language. That's not me talking.
It's late at night on work now. Nothing to worry about. That was awesome. All
Yeah, so
right.
that was in the Solomon Islands in 2019, and this was I believe it was the first time that this species Rhinacanthus abyssus had been collected not with a hook,
Mm-hmm.
and it was also the first record I think from the southern hemisphere. So it was kind of a significant fish.
Yeah.
But I wanted to show that so if anybody was curious how we go about collecting specimens,
Yeah.
we have those custom made hand nets that
Mm-hmm.
we've developed over the years, but also sometimes we just use our hands.
So now the important question is this fish in some beautiful, a reef, or is this in a jar on in the wall behind you?
That fish is in a jar behind me.
Oh
Yeah.
no!
Yes.
Okay, undo. You didn't hear that, y'all.
Yeah.
Okay, should I go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Okay, I think this is another movie. Hang
Just
on.
us and breathers. So this is an autonomous underwater vehicle that we're developing with a company in Texas called Stone Aerospace. It's actually a company they've created called Sunfish Inc.
Okay.
And this video is from last year. We had the robot out. Um, did it loop or is it playing the whole thing?
We're at 37 seconds. It's got 2 minutes to go.
Okay. Yeah, so this was last year. We had it out in Hawaii. That's my boat here in Hawaii. We are.
Nice. Oh, that's right. You're working on your boat. You kept posting pictures on Facebook. What are you
Yeah,
doing
I
to it?
finished the boat a week before we brought the robot out. And,
Nice.
like it was the catalyst to me actually finishing the boat.
Yeah.
So I spent 14 years rebuilding that boat. Um, but this robot we've been working with them. They initially developed it for deep cave exploration.
Yeah.
So it's got a very high resolution sonar sensors on it,
Yeah.
and it has multiple thrusters on it. It can move in 6 degrees of motion. It can track its movement. It can make its own decisions. It's autonomous. Um, and our goal with it is to basically over the next few years turn it into what we consider a robotic dive buddy.
Uh huh.
And our hope is that we can go on an expedition instead of blind dropping down to 400 feet and not knowing what we're going to find.
Yeah.
We would spend the first couple of days of an expedition just throwing this guy in the water. It goes down, it maps the habitat, it
Yeah.
takes video, it can do photogrammetry to get really high resolution 3D imagery of the bottom.
Yeah.
It could even find like the fishiest spots. And then it comes back to the surface. We review all the footage, all the data, and then we just choose the fishiest spot and have this thing guide us to it.
That's
So
cool.
that's the plan for this thing. Also, that trail of breadcrumbs of bailout scuba cylinders I was talking about.
Yes.
We hope to have some of those mounted to this, and it will follow us around.
Okay.
So
That's neat.
it's kind of like it's a robotic dive buddy.
It's really neat. Now, did you have the wire or whatever it is on the end in case it wants to wander away so you can roll it back up?
Right. So that's actually a fiber optic line
Okay.
that's giving a live feed back to the boat.
All right.
We have a laptop set up on the boat. So there's two reasons for that. This was the first time that anybody had used that robot in the open ocean, and we wanted to make sure it didn't swim off on its
Yeah.
own and
Right.
disappear because
Because
it
it's a
does get
robot.
right. But then we also wanted to have that live feed of footage and data back to the boat to the
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
operator.
It's because it was like fiber optic or something.
Right. So if it was working in autonomous mode, it would store all that data internally, but you couldn't download until it came back to the
Right.
surface.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. The next one is.
Excore here at Bishop Museum, and this is actually a NOAA-funded project.
Okay.
And this one's much more related to what I was hearing on some of the talks earlier. Um, these first couple shots, we're deploying a whole bunch of equipment for monitoring of water parameters
Yeah.
on mesophotic or deep coral reefs. So we're also putting down coral settlement plates, these things called arms settlement plates. We're recording PAR, dissolved oxygen, temperature,
Wow.
um, a bunch of other parameters that I can't really remember at the moment.
How can you have any par at all down there?
Right. So what we're doing is we're getting these placed at different isobaths or different specific depths. So we're
Yeah.
putting them at 20 meters. We're putting out a whole array of equipment just like this at
Yeah.
20 meters, 40 meters, 60 meters, 80 meters, and 100 meters.
Right.
And we hope to have a a data set showing what the changes in water parameters are throughout the water column that way,
Yeah.
and how the water is affecting shallow coral reefs versus how it's affecting the deep coral reefs. And as far as I know, nobody's done anything as comprehensive as this that we're doing with this NOAA project.
I love this footage.
Yeah. So this was all I shot. All of this footage was from our January trip, last January, of us deploying the equipment. You can see the settlement plates there.
Yeah.
That PVC pipe is actually a tilt meter that measures current.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
Cool.
So we're just getting a ton of data from these study sites that we have in American Samoa, and it's like I said, it's all NOAA funded, and I think it's probably going to be the most comprehensive data collection for that kind of stuff on deep reefs. But that's the deployment. We're going to go back in January to recover that stuff. Most of that big sensor is a battery, so it can keep.
I was going to say, how long does the battery last? I mean, you're going a whole year apart.
I mean, we calculated it to last well over a year.
Wow.
So hopefully they're still running or close.
And the pressure can't crush a battery. A battery's strong, like.
So that battery too, we had it custom made, and it has baffles every few feet inside, so it can hold up to at least 100 meters depth.
So neat. All right, I think the next one is this one. Maybe it might be the same one. I have to find out when I click it.
We're not just doing water chemistry, but we're also doing a full baseline biodiversity survey of American Samoa.
Look at that clarity.
Which you would think, because American Samoa is part of the United States, that somebody would have done this already, but no, nobody has done a full biological assessment of the diversity in Samoa. And this is a brand new species of Perichylinus that we're describing with our friend Lemon at the moment. And
beautiful.
It turns out, so one of our friends actually saw this on a deep dive in the early 2000s in Samoa, and he recognized it as this genus, but didn't recognize the species. And nobody did another deep dive in American Samoa until we did it in January. And I saw these guys on the very first dive, and we realized quickly that it's the most abundant fish.
Wow.
All fish. It's the most abundant of all fishes in American Samoa below 50 meters. So from 50 meters to about 100 meters, so 150 feet to 300 feet or more, it is the most common fish in Samoa. And it just happens to be an undescribed species.
And it's a wrasse, right?
It's a wrasse, yeah.
So it probably eats worms and stuff,
Yeah.
Wow. Gorgeous. I just want to put that on loop forever. That is some good footage. I am upset about the two little specks of dust. I don't know why you let that happen, but other than that footage is fantastic.
Right.
Mwah! Oh my God, I love that.
I'll Photoshop those out. Yep.
That was so good. All right, let's do this. Is this the fish?
That's the fish. So
that's the fish you put in a jar. Oh, you're a horrible man.
Right. Well, there's plenty of them though. We calculated that based on the surveys that we were doing on those two trips, that there are literally billions of these guys in American Samoa.
And these are male and female, I guess.
That's a male and a initial phase, or female on the bottom.
Do you put them in the same jar so they can stay together? I'm kidding.
I think we might have, actually. These two might be in the same jar.
Oh, that's awful. Okay.
So this guy, we're currently describing this with Lemon, right?
Yes.
Kai.
Yep.
So he's a huge help, and
it's beautiful.
I think these two specimens actually are with him in Australia right now.
Oh, okay. All right.
And then so the other weird thing in American Samoa is there is an endemic Cerulabris wrasse there, that was described by Jack Randall and Richard Pyle back in 2001
Yeah.
from specimens collected by Fenton Walsh in the 80s.
Okay.
And these, until last January, these were the only two photographs of this species. Nobody had photographed it ever since the description, and these were taken in an aquarium, actually. So there weren't any actually in situ wild photographs or images or video in almost, I would say, 30 years or so since it was first discovered.
Yeah.
So if you go to the next one,
do you think they swam up, or did someone dive that deep way back then to get this fish?
No, so these guys aren't particularly deep. I mean, it's still deep, like 40 to 50 meters. So, 120 to 150 feet is where you tend to see these guys. But it's not your typical coral reef habitat. It's a lot of the Pacific Islands, even here in Hawaii.
Turn it down. Are you drunk?
Yeah, that's my slow-mo helium voice.
Oh, slow-mo helium. Got it. That's why I said drunk.
Yeah, a lot of the habitat on Pacific Islands adjacent to coral reefs is this halimeda bed habitat or macroalgae bed habitat. Even here on Oahu, there's a swath of this macroalgae, mostly halimeda, but some others. There's a swath of this habitat that is equal to or larger than the actual coral reef habitat. And a lot of the fishes a lot of the fairy wrasses, the flash wrasses, halicuries, a few other fish. Whenever I see them in people's aquariums, I'm like, that's the wrong habitat, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of these guys, I like to call them reef-adjacent species. The genus or the family is typically considered a coral reef group, but when you actually see them in situ, they're not up on shallow coral reefs. So the other thing about that is divers like to dive on pretty coral reefs. So if you go to these weird habitats, you tend to find things that people don't notice normally, like odd Cerulabris, like this one, which is Walshi, Cerulabris walshi, which to this day is considered a American Samoa endemic. It hasn't even been found in Samoa or Western Samoa.
Yeah.
I'm sure it occurs there, just nobody's looked. So sometimes everything doesn't work out so well, and here's an example of that.
That's amazing. Don't litter.
Yeah, he got it back.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one of our last dives from the last trip on the northern end of American Samoa.
Yeah.
But so we have multiple years of trips back to American Samoa for this NOAA project, where I'm hoping that we get like the most complete picture of deep reef ecology and chemistry and oceanography and biodiversity of any one location. It's hard to find a place where you can do a study like that long term. Like you could pull it off here in Hawaii, but our reefs aren't that diverse. I mean, we have unique reefs, but they're not as diverse as American Samoa.
Okay, well, I think we're wrapping up. I do have some questions. So, how cold is it down there?
It depends where we are. Here in Hawaii, we've done dives where it's 85 degrees at the surface and low 50s on the bottom.
So how thick is your wetsuit?
So I don't know if you picked up on it, but in that video clip, Richard Pyle's just wearing his button-up blue shirt.
I saw that, yeah.
So wetsuits don't last very long on these dives.
Providing some warmth as well, because what's happening? Plus, you're breathing in warm air.
Yeah, so there's a chemical, a hydroxide compound in the rebreather that's
Yes.
pulling out the carbon dioxide,
Right.
and just the action of that chemical reaction gives
Huh.
off heat and moisture.
What do you do about
So,
being thirsty?
so I also don't tend to get that thirsty on those. I'll chug a bunch of water before a deep dive. I've taken water bottles down, like squeeze tube type
But
water
they
bottles. I
crush.
had a m-
Yeah.
years ago, like 2 decades ago, in my old rebreather, I mounted a Camelback
Uh-huh.
inside it, and I had the little tube coming
Yeah, yeah,
over
yeah.
so I could drink underwater. That worked,
It
but I
worked.
never really needed it that bad.
Okay.
So,
And then when you're coming up, you said 5 hours decompression time. What at what
well,
level?
that's like if we were to do like a dive deeper than 400 feet, you're looking at 4 to 5 hours of total time in the water. So,
Oh,
um,
but I mean, you do you go to like I don't know 100 feet and wait, and then 50 feet, and then finally
yeah,
15, or what is where is
exactly.
your spots?
So it depends on the profile, but we have computers that will tell us what our decompression, we call it our decompression ceiling is.
Yeah.
And so we'll ascend to just below that. You don't want to ever exceed that.
Right.
And basically, once you reach your initial decompression ceiling, it's a waiting game until
Yeah.
you move up 10 more feet, and then you move up 10 more feet, and
Oh,
you
it's
move
always
up 10
10.
more feet
Okay.
until you get to the surface.
And then what do you do with your time? I think you told me once before you're deleting pictures or something. You're cleaning your
No,
camera.
I'm lucky now. I have this camera system that I've pieced together that the batteries last for 5 hours,
Yeah.
so I can still keep shooting video. And most places that we do
Oh.
these dives, not necessarily here in Hawaii, but other islands where we have steep drop offs, it's just a long dive.
Yeah.
It gets pretty boring when we do these offshore sites in Hawaii where all of that decompression is in blue water,
Yeah.
because then you're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs hoping a
Right.
tiger shark doesn't show up.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Happens a lot.
you shoot down low, but when you come up, you keep shooting more and more because you still find things to look at. I
Right.
see.
Yeah.
Okay, I keep picturing you're just in the middle of water, just trying to find that spot, not go higher, but there's nothing
Yeah.
around you. You're just like bored
Oh,
to
so
tears.
well, if there's a slope, we tend
Yeah,
to kind
I
of swim
see.
up the slope.
Okay, okay, yeah. I just thought straight up, there's nothing.
No,
Maybe a jellyfish goes by. I don't know. Okay,
no.
wow. This was so fun, so interesting. Thank you for sharing it. I hope that the viewers enjoy watching this later as well. It is time for one of our next speakers to come. So, guys, we're going to end this stream here and start the next one. I'm going to touch base with Scott and see what he says. Maybe James will fight for the spot because we went a whole hour. But this was awesome, and I hope that you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we should do this again. Maybe
We should.
maybe
We
next
should do a
time
lot of them.
pictures of peppermint angelfish because
Yeah, sure.
that everyone wants to see that fish over and over and over.
Right.
But
Cool. Sounds
all
good.
right, thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, bye.
Bye.